Police K9 finds little boy covering his twins in the woods. What he says next will shock you. The blizzard had swallowed Sierra Lake whole. Snow didn't fall that night, it attacked. Sheets of white slammed against the pines, bending them like they were nothing more than matchsticks. Wind screamed across the ridgelines, ripping shingles off cabins, smothering the world under a roaring avalanche of cold. Inside an isolated cabin on the northern slope, Detective Ryan Mercer sat alone in the wavering glow of a wood-burning stove. His badge was in a drawer, his gun locked away. His name dragged through headlines he never deserved. Suspension felt less like discipline and more like exile. He hadn't left the cabin in days, not for groceries, not for company, not even for the sheriff's voicemails asking for a statement. Instead, he sat in an old leather chair with a blanket thrown over his knees, listening to a storm that sounded like it wanted the whole mountain gone. Ranger lay on the rug across from him, a massive German shepherd with a graying muzzle and a quiet dignity. 9 years old, former police K9. A warrior retired with honors and scars. Ranger rarely moved these days except to reposition closer to the fire. Tonight, though, he wasn't sleeping. Ryan didn't notice it at first, not through the fog of exhaustion pressing against his skull. Then something shifted in the room. A pressure, a tension. Ranger stood. Not slowly, not with the lazy stretch of an aging dog. He snapped upright like a soldier hearing a distant battlefield. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Buddy, what's wrong?" Ranger didn't blink, didn't glance back. His ears speared forward, muscles pulling tight beneath his coat. A low vibration began deep in his chest, so low Ryan felt it in the floorboards before he heard it. Then Ranger bolted to the back door, claws scraping wood. "Ranger, hey, hey!" Ryan pushed to his feet. But the dog wasn't listening. He shoved his nose into the door seam and snarled, pacing, shoulders rolling with a coiled violence Ryan hadn't seen since their last raid together. Another growl, short, hard, urgent. That was when Ryan's pulse stumbled. This wasn't storm anxiety. This was the K9 alert every handler feared, the one that meant human scent in lethal conditions. "Ranger, talk to me!" But the dog's mind was gone, locked onto something outside. Then he howled. It wasn't a mournful, lonely howl. It was a raw, ripping signal, filled with panic and command. It shattered through the blizzard's roar and through Ryan's reluctance like a blade. The storm was no longer the threat. Something else was. Ryan rushed for his jacket, grabbing a flashlight bright enough to blind a bear. Ranger scratched the door with frantic urgency. The moment Ryan unlatched the lock, the wind tore it open, flinging ice into his face like knives. Ranger vanished into the white before Ryan even stepped outside. "Ranger!" Ryan plunged. After him. Snow hit his chest, nearly knocking him down. The storm was merciless, a wall of stinging cold that stole breath instantly. His flashlight beam cut no more than a few feet ahead, swallowed whole by swirling chaos. He followed sound. Ranger's bark, sharp, repeating, moving. Ryan pushed through drifts that nearly reached his waist, branches whipping him with frozen leaves. His lungs burned, his legs shook from cold and adrenaline. He couldn't think about the suspension or the betrayal that put him here. All he could do was keep moving. A final bark tore through the storm. Ryan forced himself between two pines bowed heavy with snow and stumbled into a hollow beneath them. Ranger was already there, digging like a mad creature, snow flying in frantic bursts. "Ranger, back!" Ryan dropped to his knees beside him, shining the light downward. His breath caught. A small figure was curled on the ground. A boy, maybe 7, kneeling, arms wrapped forward, body hunched protectively. His pajamas were soaked stiff. His thin frame shook violently, but he did not move away when Ryan touched his shoulder. "Kid, hey, I've got you. You're okay." No response. The boy didn't even look up. Ryan gently pried the child backward. That was when he saw them. 2 infant carriers beneath the boy's small, shaking body. 2 tiny faces, ghost pale, lips edged blue, breathing shallow. Twins. Ryan's vision tunneled. Dear God! He scooped the boy closer to his chest, trying to shield him from the wind, then leaned down to the babies. Their clothing was wet, skin icy. They wouldn't last minutes out here. Ranger, heel! Ryan roared over the storm. Ranger moved instantly, pressing his body against Ryan's leg, ready for command. Ryan lifted the boy fully. I'm getting you home, all 3 of you. The boy's fingers twitched weakly. He clutched Ryan's jacket like it was the last solid thing in the world. His lips trembled, voice barely a whisper. Mom told me Ranger would find us. For a moment, Ryan couldn't breathe. Ranger stepped forward, pressing his forehead gently to the boy's shoulder, as if confirming his presence. The storm roared around them, but something colder slid into Ryan's spine at those words. Mom told me. They were running from something, or someone. He hooked the carriers onto his forearm, held the shaking boy tight, and began the brutal trudge back through the blizzard. Ranger led, tail low, body tight, every movement precise and purposeful. Not as a pet, as a guardian returning to duty. And Ryan, heart pounding, cold ripping into his bones, had the sinking, unmistakable feeling that this storm wasn't the worst thing waiting for them tonight. The cabin door slammed behind them, cutting off the blizzard like the world had been split in 2. Heat from the stove washed over Ryan's frozen face, but it barely took the edge off the cold, chewing at his bones. His arms ached from carrying the boy and the infant carriers, yet he didn't set them down gently. He set them down fast. Ranger circled the room once, not in confusion but in assessment. His head lowered, nose working the air. His posture had shifted fully into work mode, shoulders squared, tail stiff, eyes sharpened. It was as if the old warrior had snapped back into active duty the moment the children crossed the threshold. Ryan knelt beside the boy first. Hey, stay with me. What's your name? The boy's voice came in fragments. Eli. Okay, Eli, can you look at me? Eli didn't. His eyes kept darting to the windows, as if expecting shadows to crawl across them. He clutched the small backpack so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The twins were worse. Mason whimpered with shallow breaths, and Mila's fingers were so cold they barely responded when Ryan touched them. Both were losing body heat too fast. He grabbed a fresh stack of towels, a heavy blanket, and extra firewood. Within seconds the stove roared brighter. Ranger positioned himself between the door and the children, paws planted, chest lifted, eyes fixed on the outside, as though he could sense danger pressing in from every direction. Ryan wrapped the babies one at a time, rubbing their limbs gently to coax circulation back. The twins let out weak, high cries. It was the best sound he could have hoped for. Eli flinched at the crying. You won't let him find us, right? Ryan looked up sharply. Find you? Eli, who are you talking about? The boy swallowed. His breathing stuttered. Mom said he would come tonight. Ryan's stomach clenched. Not from fear, from recognition. That tone. He had heard it too many times interviewing children who'd run from people they should have been able to trust. But this storm, this timing, the way Ranger had reacted, something else was threading through the night, something far more deliberate than a family lost in bad weather. Who is he? Ryan pressed, keeping his voice steady. Who's coming? Eli didn't answer. Instead, he pulled the backpack tighter against his chest, curling around it as though it held the last piece of safety in his world. Ranger approached the boy then, slowly, silent. He lowered his head, nudging Eli's shoulder with the softest push. Not a demand. an offering. Eli froze at first, then his trembling hands reached out, resting on Ranger's thick fur. He leaned into him, burying his face in the dog's neck. Ranger didn't move, didn't flinch. He braced himself, letting the boy cling to him, his body warmth spreading across Eli like a shield. Ryan watched it unfold with a tightness he couldn't name. Ranger wasn't just comforting the boy, he was claiming him. Eli whispered into Ranger's fur. "Mum said you'd find us. She said you were the only one who could." Ryan's breath caught. He didn't understand. Ranger had never been connected to anyone except him. He'd never worked with another family, never been lent to another town, never had his tracker codes shared outside the department. So how did Eli's mother know his dog? Before Ryan could ask, a faint metallic sound echoed against the window. Not the wind, not a branch, something sharper. Ranger's head snapped up. The growl that followed was low and deep, rising from his chest like a storm waking inside him. He walked straight to the window, tail stiffening as he stared into the swirling white outside. Ryan grabbed his flashlight again and moved closer, trying to see through the glass. Nothing but snow. But the sound had been real, too clean to be nature. Someone out there was moving. Eli's voice quivered. "He's here." Ryan turned sharply. "Eli, who is he?" Eli's eyes filled, but he held on to Ranger tighter. "Mom said to run. She said if he found us before we reached the man with the shepherd, we'd be taken. She said he was angry." "Taken?" Ryan repeated. "Taken where?" Eli pressed his face into Ranger again, trembling. "She said he'd hurt us like he hurt her." A chill far colder than the blizzard slid through Ryan's spine. An injured mother, 3 kids abandoned in a storm, a man chasing them, a backpack guarded like treasure, and a stranger somehow knowing his dog's name. Ryan crouched in front of Eli. "Your mum, is she alive?" Eli shook his head once, a tiny, broken motion. Ryan didn't push further. Not yet. Another noise hit the cabin, this time on the far wall, a soft crunch. Snow being compacted under a heavy boot. Ranger's body surged rigid. The old warrior stepped back from the window and positioned himself between Eli and the door, gaze locked, ears pointed, breathing slow and ready. Every part of him screamed the same message. Someone was outside, someone close. Ryan reached instinctively for where his service weapon should have been. Then he remembered. Suspension. Locked away. The drawer felt miles away. He placed a steady hand on Ranger's back. "Stay with them, guard." Ranger didn't blink. He lowered into a stance Ryan hadn't seen since the night everything went wrong in the department. A stance that meant the dog was ready to die before letting anything reach the children. Ryan moved silently to the window again, flashlight in hand. But the storm swallowed everything. The world outside was a shifting wall of white. A sudden gust slammed the cabin wall hard enough to shake loose a line of snow from the roof. Eli flinched. Mason and Mila whimpered. Ryan steadied his breath. He needed to think. He needed to move. Someone was out there, and they hadn't come for shelter. He glanced at the boy. "Eli, you said you were running. Why? What's in that backpack?" For a long second, Eli didn't answer. Then, with a slow, trembling motion, he unzipped it. The cabin lights dimmed as the storm hammered the power lines overhead. Inside the backpack was a stack of documents wrapped in a plastic bag. Flash drives, a small recorder with dried blood on the edge. Eli whispered, voice cracking. "Mom told me to give this only to the man with the shepherd. She said it was the truth." Ryan stared at the bag. Something inside him shifted. This wasn't a rescue anymore. It wasn't an accident. Ranger hadn't just found lost children. They had been sent. And whatever truth their mother died for was now sitting on the floor of his cabin in the middle of the worst storm Sierra Lake had seen in 10 years. The noise outside came again. Closer. Ranger growled, deeper this time. The storm wasn't the danger. The danger had found them. The twins' breathing changed before Ryan even reached the stove with another blanket. It wasn't crying. It wasn't whimpering. It was a frightening, shallow rasp, like their lungs were refusing to expand. Ryan dropped to his knees beside them. "Come on, little ones, stay with me." Mason's chest rose only halfway, then stuttered. Mila's breaths were quick and uneven, the kind of pattern he'd seen in exposure victims before. If they slipped any deeper into respiratory collapse, there wouldn't be time to get them down the mountain even in a working truck. Eli scrambled closer, panic widening his eyes. "They're getting worse, aren't they?" Ryan forced himself to speak calmly. "They're cold. Their bodies are trying, but they need help fast." He grabbed his radio, twisted the dial, and pushed the transmit button. Nothing but static. The storm blanketed every signal with a suffocating hiss. He tried the emergency frequency. More static. "Come on." He hit the casing with his palm. "Give me something." Nothing. Ranger paced behind him, tail stiff, ears pinned forward, scanning each window as if the cabin's walls themselves were unreliable. Every pass he made, he leaned closer to the twins, sniffing, whining low in his throat. He knew. He always knew. Ryan grabbed his phone next. No service, no bars, no hope. Or almost none. He spun toward the landline mounted near the kitchen counter. It was an ancient rotary thing he kept mostly for nostalgia, but it still ran on its own power line. He picked it up. A dial tone hummed. Okay, good. He quickly punched in a number he'd memorized years ago. Not the sheriff, not the fire department, Dr. Laura Keats. A vet might not be a pediatric specialist, but Laura had dealt with enough frostbitten, shocky animals to understand emergency stabilization better than anyone else within 10 miles. The line rang once, then again, a third time, a click. Her voice broke through, tense. "Ryan, do you know what time it? I need you." 2 words, enough. Laura's tone sharpened. "What happened?" 3 kids, 1 about 7, 2 infants, severe cold exposure, respiratory distress. I can't get out of here, and the storm is killing radio." There was a brief silence, filled only by the blizzard howling outside the cabin walls. "I'll come right now," she said, "but the snow's getting worse. I'll have to take the sled. It's dangerous." Another click of silence. "So is doing nothing. Keep them warm. I'm on my way." She hung up without waiting for a response. Ryan set the phone down, heart pounding. 5 miles in this weather wasn't a trip. It was a dare against death. But if anyone could make it through that storm, it was Laura. She had a reputation in Sierra Lake for doing the impossible when animals needed her. Today, those animals happened to be children. Ranger suddenly froze at the door. Not with fear, with awareness. He leaned forward, nose twitching. Then he stepped closer, pressing his shoulder to the wood as if anchoring the cabin in place. Ryan watched him closely. "What is it, boy?" Ranger didn't break his stance. Every muscle locked, every instinct flaring. Something outside was still moving. Something that hadn't walked away after the earlier sounds. The twins wheezed again, stealing Ryan's attention back. He knelt, rubbing their small chests gently, trying to help expand their lungs. "Hang on, she's coming. Just hold on." Eli hugged the backpack to his chest again, rocking slightly. "Please don't let them die." "They won't," Ryan said. He wasn't certain, but certainty wasn't the thing the boy needed. Hope was. Minutes dragged. The storm shook the walls, rattling the windows. Ranger didn't break position once, his gaze fixed outward. Then, through the howling wind, came a faint mechanical hum. Ryan stood, listening hard. "Is that—" Ranger barked. One loud, commanding bark. Confirmation. Ryan rushed to the window. Through the blizzard's white curtain was the faint outline of a sled tearing through drifts, its headlamp cutting a shaky beam through the storm. A figure leaned forward at the helm, bundled in heavy snow gear. Laura. She fought the wind like she was wrestling a living monster. Twice the sled swerved dangerously close to a drift, nearly tipping. But she held steady. She always did. Ryan flung open the door as she approached, snow blasting inside. Laura stumbled in, pulling off her gloves. "Show me the babies." Ranger immediately stepped aside, giving her room. Laura knelt over the twins without hesitation, checking their breathing, their color, their reflexes. "They're close to respiratory arrest," she said. "I need warm saline blankets and room temperature water, now." Ryan moved without asking questions. He boiled water, cooled it fast, grabbed saline packs from his emergency kit. Laura worked fast and steady, massaging tiny limbs, clearing airways, stimulating breath. Finally, Mason coughed, a weak, sputtering cough. Mila followed seconds later. Laura exhaled. "Good, that's good. They're not out of danger, but they're responding." Eli let out a shuddering breath and pressed his forehead to Ranger's fur again. The dog licked his cheek once, a soft, deliberate gesture. Laura looked up at Ryan. "Where did you find them?" Ryan hesitated before answering. Eli was covering the twins, out in the hollow by the old pines. Laura's face tightened. "Out there, in this storm?" Eli spoke, voice soft. "Mom said to keep them warm. She said to hide." Laura turned to him gently. "Sweetheart, who were you hiding from?" Eli's throat bobbed. He stared at the floor, then at Ranger. He seemed to find enough strength in the dog's steady presence to say the words. "Uncle Damien." Ryan froze. Laura's eyes widened. "Damien Rourke." Eli nodded, tears forming. "Mom said he'd come for us tonight." The room went silent except for the crackling stove and the wind clawing at the cabin walls. Ranger moved to the door again, planting himself like a sentry. Not because of the storm, because whatever had chased the children into the woods was still out there, and now Ryan knew its name. The storm did not calm. It only shifted, tightening around the mountain like a fist. Snow hammered the trees sideways, burying tracks within seconds, erasing any sign that 3 children had nearly died in those woods. Ryan paced the cabin floor, jaw locked, hands trembling from more than the cold. Eli sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets, eyes darting between Ryan and the window, as if expecting the storm itself to reach inside. Ranger stood in the center of the room, rigid, alert, watching everything. Fear had a smell. Ranger sensed it on all of them. Laura finished stabilizing Mason and Mila, checking their breathing once more before joining Ryan at the dining table. "Their vitals are holding," she said quietly. "But they need warmth and rest. No more shocks." She hesitated. "Which means they need answers too." Ryan glanced at Eli. "We'll get them." He flicked on his laptop, praying for even a flicker of service. The signal was weak, 1 bar, barely clinging to life. But enough. He pulled up a file he hadn't opened in months. A case someone had forced closed. A case he'd sworn he'd finish one day. Missing children, shuffled between counties, lost between reports, scribbled notes in the margins, disappearing guardianships, court papers sealed by orders that always traced back to one group of names, the same group that had destroyed Ryan's career when he got too close. Ranger brushed against his leg, a grounding force. Ryan exhaled slowly. "Eli," he said gently, "can you tell me anything about where you were before the storm?" The boy flinched. Ranger padded to the couch, climbed up without being asked, and laid across Eli's legs. A warm shield. Mom said we were running. Eli whispered. She said the twins were too little to understand, but I had to be brave. Ryan nodded. Running from who? Eli swallowed. His hands shook as he clutched the old backpack he refused to let go of. We hid in Dad's workshop first. But then Uncle Damien, he found us. Laura looked up sharply. Damien Rourke. Eli froze at the name. Ryan felt the bottom of his stomach drop. Rourke. A polished attorney with spotless suits and a smile designed for courtroom theatrics. A man the department saw as untouchable. A man tied to sealed cases, hushed conversations, and one investigation that Ryan had been thrown off of the moment he found one clue too many. Eli, Ryan said softly, how did Damien find you? The boy hesitated, then unzipped his backpack. Ranger's head followed the motion, ears high and sharp. Inside the bag was a small metal box. Old, scratched, locked with a code Ryan didn't recognize. He wanted this. Eli whispered. Mom hid it with me. She said if anything happened, I had to give it to someone who wasn't scared of him. Ryan took the box gently. It felt cold even in the warm cabin air. Heavy. Important. Laura leaned closer. What is that? Proof, Eli said. Mom said it's proof of what he was doing, of what they were doing. Ryan exchanged a look with Laura. The same dread. The same understanding. This was no custody dispute, no family drama. This was something wide, dirty, rooted deep in the cracks of the system. The lights flickered as thunder rolled through the mountains. Ranger's head snapped toward the door, nostrils flaring. What is it? Ryan murmured. The shepherd growled, low, slow. A vibration that crawled through the floorboards. Laura stiffened. Someone's out there. Maybe? Ryan replied. Maybe not. The storm amplifies everything. But Ranger didn't growl at storms. He growled at danger. Eli clutched Ranger's fur, eyes wide. He's coming. Mom said he'd come tonight. Ryan grabbed his gun. Eli, look at me. No one is getting inside this cabin, but I need you to tell me something else. Why would Damien chase you through a mountain in the middle of a blizzard? Eli's lips trembled. His breath hitched. Because Mom was going to tell the police? He whispered. She said Damien and a lady judge, they were selling kids, not all of them, just the ones nobody would check on. Laura gasped. Ryan felt everything inside him stop. The missing children case, the sealed adoptions, the transfers, the signature that kept appearing. Judge Carla Henson. Ranger growled again, stepping off the couch and moving towards the door, posture lowered, body tense. We're not safe here, Laura said. Ryan, if he knows where they were heading, he'll try to finish it. Ryan finished. A gust of wind slammed the shutters so violently the cabin shook. Eli cried out. Ranger barked once, sharp, commanding, ordering everyone to stay behind him. Ryan forced calm into his voice. No one is opening that door unless I say so. Laura gathered the twins closer. Eli pulled something else from the backpack, a flash drive wrapped in duct tape and a handwritten note. If I don't make it, trust the officer with the dog. Ryan stared. Your mum knew Ranger? He asked quietly. Eli nodded. She said he'd find us. She said he was the only one she trusted. Ryan didn't have time to process the weight of that. The note, the box, the flash drive, the judge, Damien, pieces of a puzzle he had once been forced to abandon. But Ranger didn't care about puzzles. He cared about threats. He moved to the window. Rigid, alert, silent. Laura whispered, Is someone out there? No. Ryan said carefully, watching the dog. Not someone. Several. Snow shifted under heavy boots, a faint thud, then another. Ranger's growl turned into that deep, chest-borne rumble Ryan had heard only a handful of times during active duty. It was a warning. A final warning. Whoever was outside ignored it. Laura mouthed the words without sound. They found us. Ryan stepped forward, gun raised, voice steady. Everyone get behind the pantry wall, now! Eli froze. But what about— Move, Ryan said, and as Laura ushered the children into the back of the cabin, Ranger took 2 slow steps toward the door. Waiting. Ready. The storm roared. A shadow crossed the window, and the nightmare finally arrived at their doorstep. The storm had eased, but only in the way a predator eases its stance before striking again. Wind still pressed against the cabin walls, rattling loose nails and slipping cold air through every crack in the wood. The fire burned hot, but an unease hung in the air heavier than the smoke. Ryan sat at the old wooden table, the USB drive Eli had guarded so fiercely plugged into his laptop. The screen's glow cut through the dim cabin like a surgical light. He scrolled slowly, jaw tight, every click revealing something worse than the last. Laura stood behind him with her arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Eli sat next to Ranger on the floor, the German shepherd curled protectively around the 3 children like a living shield. Ranger's head rested on Eli's knee, but his ears stayed up, every muscle slightly tense. "This is not custody paperwork," Laura said quietly. "No," Ryan answered. "It's a laundering ledger." He pulled up a spreadsheet, rows of numbers, initials, and odd codes, but the labels on the left side told the real story. Transfers, adoption fees. Laura stepped closer. What are these amounts? These are not normal. Ryan clicked another tab. A new document filled the screen, contracts, false signatures, photos of infants, dates, all tied to the same 2 names. Damien Rourke, Judge Carla Henson. Laura sucked in a breath. Adoptions pushed through the county court. No parental screenings, no follow-up visits, no medical logs, no case audits. This is trafficking. Ryan opened the next folder. Audio files. He clicked the first. A man's voice filled the cabin, low and smooth, controlled. Damien. She found the paperwork. Do you understand what that means? She is going to take it to Mercer. The second voice was a woman's. Calm, even colder. Judge Henson. Mercer is suspended. He can't touch us, and he won't. I made sure of that. Ryan paused the audio. His hand hovered over the trackpad. That is the day I was suspended, he said quietly. I questioned a sealed case file involving Damien. He made a complaint. Then suddenly I am under investigation for misconduct that never happened. They executed this together. Eli hugged Ranger tighter. Mom said they were watching us, that Uncle Damien had friends everywhere. Laura shook her head, disbelief twisting into anger. I remember 2 children disappearing 3 years ago. I remember the search teams, the vigils. No leads, no suspects. She pointed at the screen. Their initials are right here, Ryan. They went through this system. Ryan leaned back, breath unsteady. This is bigger than we thought. He opened one more file, a scanned letter written in a shaky hand. If anything happens to me, give this to the man with the shepherd. He will know what to do. Signed, Marissa Hale, Eli's mother. Ryan pressed his palms against his eyes. She knew she was running out of time. Laura placed a hand on the back of Ryan's chair. We have to get this to the state investigators. This is enough to bring down half the courthouse. Not tonight, Ryan said. Not until the kids are safe. Eli's voice shook. Mom said he would come. She said he knew every road. He does, Ryan said. And when he realizes you survived, he'll come straight here. Ranger lifted his head sharply. A low, rolling growl vibrated from his chest. The sound was deep, primal, unmistakable. It turned everyone's blood cold. Ryan froze. That's his threat growl, he whispered. Not alert, not warning. Laura stepped back. Meaning what? He senses a live target. Close. Ranger stood, every hair on his body rising. He walked to the door with deliberate steps, nose working the air, breathing slow and precise. His tail stiffened, straight behind him. Eli scooted back against the table, hugging the twins. Ryan moved beside Ranger, peering through a slit in the curtain. Snow whipped past the glass. But beyond the movement of the wind, he saw something else. A shadow. Not a tree bending, not wind-carving patterns. A man-shaped outline moving between the pines. Laura's pulse thudded. Is that— Yes, Ryan said. His voice came out like a blade. Someone is out there. The shadow stopped, turned, as if sensing the cabin watching back. Ranger's growl deepened. The air inside the room tightened like a knot. Then the shadow disappeared behind a drift. Laura whispered, We need to barricade the door. No, Ryan said. That will just make noise. He's scouting, not attacking yet. Eli shook his head rapidly. He's looking for us. Mom said he would come. She said if he finds us, he will take the twins first. Ryan knelt in front of Eli, gripping his shoulders gently but firmly. Look at me. We are not letting him take anyone. Ranger won't let him step through that door. Eli's chin quivered. He killed my mum. Ranger leaned forward and pressed his forehead into the boy's chest, a silent, unwavering promise. Ryan stood again. Laura, help me check the windows. If he is circling us, he will test every corner of this cabin. As they moved, the files on the laptop screen glowed behind them like damning evidence pinned under a spotlight. Ryan paused by the table, glancing at the audio file still open. Damien's voice echoed faintly through the speakers. No one will believe her. No one will believe the boy either. Ryan's jaw locked. He is wrong. Laura looked at him. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago, Ryan said. Finish the case they tried to bury me for. Another sound outside. Snow crunching. Closer. Ranger moved like lightning to the window, body tense, shoulders high. Ryan reached for his flashlight, not as a light, but as a potential weapon. Laura grabbed a fire poker from beside the stove. Eli clutched Ranger's tail, eyes wide. Outside, the shadow moved again. Closer. Then a voice carried through the storm. Low, familiar, targeted. Eli. Laura's breath hitched. He is calling for him. The voice came again. Eli, come out. Your mother needs you. Eli shook violently. That's not her voice. That's him. That's Uncle Damien. Ryan's pulse hammered. He does not know we have the evidence yet. That is our advantage. Ranger pressed his body against the door, ready. The growl in his throat turned into something deeper, something Ryan had only heard twice in his entire career. A death promise. Laura whispered, He is not going away. Ryan nodded slowly. No, he said. He's coming in. Ranger bared his teeth at the door, eyes locked on the darkness outside. The storm was no longer the threat. The truth was at the doorstep. The storm had quieted just enough for Ryan to hear the engine before he saw the lights. A slow, heavy rumble shook the snow-packed ground beneath the cabin, vibrating through the floorboards like an approaching avalanche. Ranger lifted his head first. Then he stood. Ranger's posture changed in a single breath. Shoulders squared, tail stiff, ears locked forward. His entire body shifted into combat readiness, the way Ryan had trained him years ago. Not for noise, not for fear, for danger. Ryan moved to the window. Through the sleet and fractured light, he saw it coming down the slope. A massive snow groomer, the kind used to maintain ski trails, 20,000 pounds of steel, able to plow through the mountain like it was paper. And behind its windshield, 3 silhouettes. Laura whispered from behind him. Tell me that isn't... It's Damien, Ryan said. He knows Eli survived. The groomer screeched to a stop just yards from the cabin. The engine idled like an animal breathing. Bright industrial lights flooded the porch, bleaching the front door in white. A moment later, someone knocked. 3 calm, polite taps. Ranger growled so deeply the windows trembled. Ryan motioned for Laura. Take the kids. Stay low. Get to the cellar door, but don't go down unless I say. Laura didn't argue. She scooped up Mason and Myla, guiding Eli with her free hand. Ranger stepped aside just long enough to let them pass, then returned to guard position. Ryan opened the door only halfway. Damien Rourke stood on the porch with a face of manufactured sorrow and perfectly staged panic. Ryan, he said breathlessly, thank God. We're here to help. The 2 men behind him were the opposite of helpful. One was built like a wall of meat, the other wiry with hands that twitched near his coat pockets. Their eyes searched the room with predatory calculation. Ryan kept his voice flat. Why do you have a snow groomer, Damien? We found Marissa's car. She isn't there. Damien let his voice crack as he stepped closer. We found tracks, small tracks, children. We followed them. Ryan, listen to me. I know we've disagreed, but let me take them. They need a hospital. Ranger stepped forward, pressing against Ryan's leg, teeth bared silently. Damien's gaze flicked to the dog, just for a moment, but in that moment the mask slipped. His mouth tightened, his eyes hardened. Ryan saw it. So did Ranger. No one is taking these kids, Ryan said. Back away. The mountain-sized henchman moved first, stepping through the threshold like a boulder rolling downhill. He reached into his coat. Ryan didn't hesitate. Ranger, engage! The shepherd exploded forward. One moment he was by Ryan's leg, the next he was airborne, a streak of black and tan fur crashing directly into the wiry man reaching for a gun. Ranger hit him center mass, teeth locking onto his forearm with a crunch that split the cabin's calm wide open. The gun discharged once into the ceiling. Wood splintered. Plaster fell like dust. Laura screamed from the back room. Ryan lunged toward the second attacker, the giant, whose hand was already mid-draw. Ryan used the furniture to his advantage, slamming his shoulder into the heavy bookshelf, just like he had practiced years ago clearing barricades. The shelf tipped, then toppled, crashing down between them, stunning the man long enough for Ryan to swing a wide arc with a cast-iron fire poker. The blow hit the man's collarbone. A crack echoed. The giant staggered. Ryan hit him again, lower, sweeping his legs. The man fell with a thud that shook the floor. Ranger dragged the gunman across the boards, pinning him with his full weight, jaws clamped, growling with lethal precision. The man screamed and begged, but Ranger didn't budge. He only held tighter. Damien remained near the door, untouched, watching the chaos with cold calculation. You should have stayed suspended, Ryan, he said quietly. This didn't have to be messy. Then his gaze flicked past Ryan, toward Eli. The boy had stepped out of the hallway in panic, clutching the backpack against his chest. Laura spun. Eli, get back! Damien moved like a striking snake. He lunged across the porch, grabbed Eli's arm, and yanked him hard enough to lift his small body off the ground. Let go of him! Ryan roared. Eli screamed. Ranger spun, teeth red, ready to spring, but Damien pressed the boy in front of him like a shield. Back down, he snarled. Call off the dog or the boy freezes tonight. He slammed his hand against the doorframe and dragged Eli into the blizzard. Wind ripped through the cabin as the door blew wide, snow scattering across the floor. Eli! Laura's cry was sharp and raw. Ryan lunged, but the giant he'd knocked down grabbed his ankle, desperate and vicious. Ryan kicked free, but it cost him seconds. Damien disappeared into the storm. Eli's screams faded. Ranger bolted toward the open door, but Ryan grabbed his harness. "No, buddy, not yet. He'll shoot you in the open." Ranger snarled, muscles trembling, torn between instinct and training. "Not yet," Ryan repeated. The shepherd froze, chest heaving, eyes burning at the white void where the boy vanished. The storm swallowed everything. Laura staggered forward with the twins in her arms, pale, shaking. "What do we do, Ryan? He has Eli. He has him." Ryan stared into the storm, jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. "We get him back," he said. Ranger stepped beside him, lifting his head to the wind. Then slowly, deliberately, he pressed his paw into the snow and looked up at Ryan, waiting for the command, ready to hunt. The moment the cabin door slammed shut behind Damien and Eli, the storm swallowed every last trace of them. Wind roared like a living creature, tearing through the pines, flattening Ryan's shouts before they could carry. Snow whipped across the porch in violent sheets. The world outside was a white void. Laura clutched Mason and Mila, her breath shaky, her face drained of color. "Ryan, we can't lose him." Ryan grabbed his jacket, holster, and radio. "I'm not losing anyone." Ranger was already at the door, vibrating with contained fury, nose pointed toward the forest. Ryan clipped the dog's harness, but Ranger didn't wait for permission. He pushed into the storm the moment Ryan opened the door. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Ryan cursed. Damien knew this mountain. He could vanish for hours in conditions like these. "Ranger, track." Ryan pointed into the darkness. The shepherd lowered his nose, inhaled sharply, then launched into the woods with absolute conviction. His paws cut through the snow with the purpose of an animal born to do this. But even as Ryan ran after him, he knew one truth. They needed more than a dog and a badge. They needed backup. Real backup. Ryan ducked behind a boulder to shield the radio from the wind. Static hissed. The frequency was nearly dead. Only one channel stood a chance, an encrypted line he and his former partner had used years ago when working undercover. A channel the department had forgotten, except for one person. Ryan exhaled and pressed the transmission button. "Callan, if you can hear this, I need you. Kidnapped child. Suspect is Damien Rourke. He has a snow groomer and a head start." Static. Then, a voice cracked through softly. "Ryan Mercer," Callan Brooks said, half in disbelief, half in fear. "Tell me you're not calling me from a blizzard." Ryan didn't waste a second. Damien took Eli Hale. "He's moving through Sierra Ridge. He's armed. He has money. He will run if he gets off this mountain." Callan inhaled sharply. "I'm tracking you geographically through the ping. Your signal's bouncing off the ranger tower. Don't move! I'm pulling resources." "I don't have time," Ryan snapped. "He's got minutes on us, maybe less." "You'll get time," Callan replied. "I'm locking this channel and waking up the FBI cybercrimes unit. Damien's finances were already flagged. If he tries to move funds, I can freeze him in place." Ryan smiled grimly. "Do it." He snapped the radio back onto his belt and ran after Ranger, who had broken into a sprint. The shepherd cut a path through drifts up to his chest, but he didn't falter. He followed Eli's scent with a kind of violent loyalty, weaving through fallen branches and nearly invisible animal tracks. Ranger suddenly stopped, his head shot upward, nostrils flaring. He let out a single, sharp bark, a signal. Ryan hurried to his side. There, half buried in snow, was Eli's glove. Still warm. "He's close, buddy," Ryan murmured. "Find him." Ranger pushed forward again, urgency rising with every second. Behind them, the radio crackled to life. "Ryan, you're going to want to hear this," Callan said. "Damien just tried to transfer $9 million to an offshore account." $9 million. Ryan clenched his jaw. "He's cashing out." "Not anymore," Callan replied. FBI locked the account. The transfer bounced. He won't get a single dollar. Ryan felt a surge of adrenaline. Good, that'll force him into the open. Oh, and another thing. Callan added. I alerted the State Patrol. They're deploying roadblocks and a mobile command unit. They're diverting plows to create a containment ring. Ryan looked into the storm. They won't reach him before I do. Ranger barked once more and accelerated again. Minutes later, through the blinding white, Ryan saw it. A trail of churned-up snow, wide and deep. Snow groomer tracks. He followed the ripped path until he saw the machine itself half a mile away, stalled near a ravine. Its engine hummed weakly, headlights flickering. But Damien wasn't inside. Ranger took off towards the tree line. Ryan followed, and then he heard it. A scream. Eli! Ryan ran faster, lungs burning in the thin, frozen air. Ranger bounded ahead, his bark splitting through the wind. They burst into a clearing. Damien held Eli by the collar, dragging him toward a narrow ledge that dropped into a ravine filled with black ice and broken trees. "Let him go!" Ryan shouted. Damien spun around, gun drawn, eyes wild. "You ruined everything!" Damien spat. "You and your damn dog! You want the boy? Come get him!" Ranger stepped in front of Ryan, head low, shoulder muscles trembling with intensity. "No," Ryan whispered quietly to him. "Not yet." Damien laughed. "You think you can shoot me in this wind? You think you can aim through a blizzard?" Ryan didn't lift his gun. He lifted the radio. "Callan," he said, "patch me through." A new voice came over the frequency. This one was commanding, professional. This one belonged to a State Patrol sergeant. "Mercer, we have Rourke in visual from drone footage. Units are moving in." Damien froze for a split second. That was all Ranger needed. Ryan didn't say a word. Ranger launched. The shepherd shot across the snow like a missile, teeth locked, aiming not for flesh but for Damien's wrist, the gun hand. He hit with surgical precision, snapping Damien's aim upward as the gun fired harmlessly into the sky. Damien screamed and fell backward, dropping Eli. Ryan seized the chance, dove forward and grabbed the boy, rolling them both into the snow. Eli sobbed into Ryan's jacket, shaking violently. Ranger pinned Damien to the ground, snarling, holding him with perfectly measured force. Not killing, subduing. Within seconds, blue and red lights flickered through the snowstorm. State troopers emerged from behind snowbanks, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Damien was yanked upright, cuffed, and dragged toward the groomer. "Get him out of my sight," one trooper muttered. Another knelt beside Eli, checking him over. "You're safe now. You're okay." Eli didn't look at the trooper. He looked at Ranger. The boy crawled forward and buried his face in the shepherd's neck. Ranger nuzzled him gently, tail thumping once in the snow. Ryan placed a hand on Eli's back. "You're safe," he murmured. "I told you we'd find you." Eli lifted his head, tears clinging to his lashes. "You didn't find me," he said softly. "Ranger did." Ranger pressed his head into Eli's chest. It was the truth, and everyone there knew it. Even the storm seemed to pause long enough to breathe again. The storm broke sometime before dawn. It didn't fade. It snapped. 1 hour of roaring wind became a sudden, unnatural stillness, as if the whole mountain exhaled at once. By the time the rescue teams cleared the ridge and escorted everyone back down, the sun had risen over a world remade in white. Inside Sierra Lake Medical Outpost, the heat was too bright, too clean. Machines beeped softly. Nurses whispered as though trying not to disturb the quiet that follows fear. Mason and Mila slept curled into one another, small chests rising evenly for the first time since the forest. Their breaths were warmer, stronger. A nurse called it a miracle. Laura's hands trembled when she checked them, but her voice stayed steady. "They're recovering well. It's going to take time, but they're safe." Eli sat on the bed beside them, knees pulled to his chest. His eyes were raw, rimmed with the kind of exhaustion no child should carry. When Ryan approached, the boy looked up like he wasn't sure if the world outside the storm was real. "Can I stay here?" Eli asked. "You're not going anywhere without me knowing." Ryan said, "You're safe." But it was Ranger Eli looked at next. The big shepherd lay stretched across the floor like a silent guardian, one paw touching the base of Eli's bed. His eyes half closed, but never fully asleep. Every time a door opened or boots echoed down the hallway, Ranger's ears snapped up first. No one approached the children without encountering that quiet, measured stare. Doctors and troopers alike began walking a little softer around him. Ryan settled onto the bench near the window. Sunlight fell across his face. He hadn't slept since before the storm started, but fatigue didn't weigh on him the way he expected. Something else filled that space now. Vindication. Callan arrived mid-morning, hair unkempt, still wearing a jacket dusted with snow. He held a tablet loaded with evidence. "You're cleared," Callan said, handing the device over. "Damien's confession matches everything you've been saying for 6 months. The department is issuing a full apology. Your suspension is over." Ryan didn't smile, but his shoulders eased. "Took them long enough." Callan exhaled. "You were right about the whole network. Judge Henson is in custody. Damien gave up everything trying to cut a deal. He didn't get one." Ryan set the tablet down. "What about the kid's mother?" Callan hesitated. "She didn't make it off the mountain. Search and rescue found signs of a struggle. Damien used her to lure the children out." "I'm sorry." The words hit Eli harder than any storm. The boy curled inward again, burying his face against his knees. Ryan felt something inside him twist. He walked to the bed and lowered himself to Eli's level. "Your mum saved you. She kept you alive long enough for us to find you. She didn't give up on you, and we're not giving up either." Eli didn't speak, but he reached out and gripped Ryan's sleeve, holding on like a lifeline. Ranger rose, padded over, and rested his head gently on Eli's lap. The boy's fingers threaded into the shepherd's fur. Color returned to his face. Not much, just enough to show he was still fighting. Hours passed. By late afternoon, the outpost grew quiet. Reporters were kept outside. Troopers rotated shifts. The blizzard was gone, leaving a stillness that felt almost sacred. Laura approached Ryan in the hallway. "The kids can't be left alone right now. CPS wants a temporary guardian while the case unfolds." She paused, reading his expression. "I told them your cabin has heat, space, and, well, Ranger." "Laura." Ryan started. "And," she continued without letting him speak, "I told them I'm staying there too, at least until the children stabilize. They need continuity. They need to feel safe. And you can't do that alone." Ryan blinked. "You're moving into my cabin?" "Temporary," she said, a blush rising on her cheeks. "Unless you object." "I don't." Ryan replied quickly. "Not even a little." She smiled. For a moment, the hallway felt warmer than it should. They gathered the kids an hour later. Mila clung to Ranger immediately, tiny fingers gripping the shepherd's collar. Mason shuffled beside his sister, still pale but steady. Eli walked close to Ryan, small hand wrapped in Ryan's jacket sleeve. Outside, the world glistened. Snow sparkled like crushed glass. Their footprints were the only marks in an untouched landscape. When they reached the cabin again, Ranger bolted ahead, circling the porch, checking every corner as though re-establishing territory. Only once he'd inspected everything did he trot back and stand near Laura and the kids, posture tall, chest proud. Inside, the fire crackled. Laura cooked soup. The twins ate slow, eyelids heavy. Eli traced the stitching of the couch pillow, lost in thought. Ryan stepped outside for a moment and breathed the cold air. Quiet. Finally quiet. He turned to see Ranger slip out beside him, tail swaying but disciplined. The dog pressed his shoulder into Ryan's leg, a silent acknowledgement. "You did good," Ryan murmured. Ranger's ears flicked, as if accepting the praise with the seriousness of a decorated soldier. Night fell softly. Laura tucked the children into makeshift beds near the fireplace. Ryan sat in the armchair beside them, boots still on, refusing to move more than a few feet away. Ranger lay stretched across the floor between all three kids, head positioned toward the door, eyes open even as his breathing slowed. The cabin felt fuller than it ever had. Warmer. Alive. Outside, the mountains stood silent beneath the moonlight. Inside, the storm that had once threatened everything had yielded to something else. A fragile peace. A new beginning. And Ranger, with the quiet authority of a guardian who had seen darkness and refused to yield to it, kept watch until dawn. Spring came to Sierra Lake slowly, as if the mountains needed time to trust the warmth again. Snow retreated from the pines one thin layer at a time. Streams thawed and began to murmur. The air no longer bit at the skin, but carried the soft smell of damp, earth, and young grass. 3 months had passed since the night the storm tried to swallow them whole. Now the world felt different, the kind of different that only comes after something nearly breaks and then, somehow, comes back stronger. Ryan stood at the edge of the cabin porch, hands in his pockets, watching sunlight spread across the yard. It still didn't feel real. The quiet, the peace, the life rebuilt piece by piece. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. Callan stepped out, grinning, adjusting the badge clipped to his belt. "Still can't get used to people calling me Supervisor Brooks. Sounds like I stole someone's title." Ryan chuckled. "You earned it." "Yeah, well, you're the one they want back on the force." Callan nudged him. "Full reinstatement. No conditions. That's huge." Ryan pretended to brush snow off the railing, just to have something to do with his hands. "It feels strange." "You mean it feels right?" Callan corrected softly. "You got dealt a bad hand. Now it's turning." Ryan didn't answer, not because he doubted it, but because the truth felt heavy in a way he wasn't ready to unpack. Redemption wasn't a switch that flipped. It was a new road he was still learning to walk. A burst of laughter carried across the yard. Eli. The boy stood near the stump they had turned into a makeshift pitcher's mound. He wound his arm back and launched a baseball with all the concentration of a kid trying to prove something to himself, not anyone else. The ball sailed crookedly. Before it hit the ground, Ranger darted beneath it with the speed and precision of an athlete half his age. He caught it cleanly in his jaws and jogged back, tail up, proud and protective. He dropped the ball gently at Eli's feet and waited. Eli wiped his nose on his sleeve, determined. "I'll throw it straight next time." Ranger tilted his head, as if quietly saying he believed him. Mason and Myla sat in the grass nearby, building crooked forts out of twigs and tiny rocks. Every few minutes they glanced at Ranger to make sure he was still close. The shepherd always was. Inside the cabin, Laura stepped onto the porch, brushing flour from her hands. She wore a faded Sierra Lake hoodie and jeans smudged with paint from the new community center she had poured herself into the last few months. "You two going to keep standing around, or are you joining us?" she called out. Callan held up his hands. "I'm off duty today. My only job is to catch sun and pretend I'm not terrible at baseball." Ryan took in the sight of her, hair pulled back, cheeks flushed from baking, eyes bright with the hope she'd been afraid to believe in for years. "How's everything going at the center?" he asked. Laura stepped down, her expression softening. Mountain Haven opens next week. First group of foster kids arrives in 10 days. Volunteers are lined up, and the county approved the therapy dog program. Her eyes shifted to Ranger. He's the reason we're doing this, she added. All of it. Ryan nodded. He saved more than just those kids. Laura didn't hide her meaning. She didn't need to. Ranger returned the baseball to Eli again, and this time the throw went straighter. Not perfect, but good. Progress. The shepherd barked once, a sound filled with approval. A car pulled up the long gravel road, kicking up dust. A woman from Child Services stepped out, clipboard in hand. Ryan tensed instinctively until she offered a warm smile and waved. Detective Mercer, she greeted. I have the final paperwork. Laura glanced at him. This is it. The woman approached, flipping her folder open. Given the circumstances, the completed evaluations, and the testimony we received from the State Patrol, the department is granting you temporary guardianship of Eli, Mason, and Mila. Ryan felt the world stop for a moment. Temporary guardianship. 3 children who had survived a nightmare. 3 children who had slept curled beside Ranger for months because they trusted him more than anything else in the world. He looked at Eli. The boy stopped mid-wind-up and turned, suddenly nervous, as if bracing for bad news. Ryan knelt in the grass and opened his arms slightly, not wanting to force anything. If you want to stay, he said quietly. All of you have a place here. No pressure, no expectations, just home, for as long as you need it. Eli didn't hesitate. He ran forward and crashed into Ryan's chest, arms wrapping tightly around him. Mason and Mela hurried over too, pressing into his side. Ranger circled them once, then lay down beside the group, chest broad and steady, as though claiming them with his presence alone. Callan cleared his throat loudly, pretending to look at the sky to hide emotion. Well, he muttered, guess we're a family operation now. Laura laughed softly, wiping at her eye. It's Sierra Lake. Everything good here starts small. Ryan rested a hand on Ranger's head. And everything strong starts with trust. The woman from Child Services snapped a picture for her report. Not posed, not staged, just real. A moment captured in the middle of a quiet yard on a day that looked like any other. But it wasn't. It was a turning point, a legacy taking shape. Later, as the sun dipped low and painted the forest gold, Eli threw the ball again. This time it was straight, clean, steady. Ranger didn't just catch it. He brought it back and placed it gently in Eli's hand, not at his feet, holding the boy's gaze as if telling him the part of the story only a dog could. You're safe now. You're growing. I'm not leaving. Ryan watched them from the porch, warmth gathering in his chest. He finally understood something. A storm might break a man. But what comes after? The quiet rebuilding, the unexpected family, the new purpose. That becomes the legacy he leaves behind. And Ranger, faithful to the end, stood ready to guard that legacy every day from here forward. The morning of the grand opening arrived with a thin layer of mist drifting over Sierra Lake, clinging to the treetops like the last whisper of winter. The new rescue center stood at the edge of the forest, all timber beams and warm windows, built with donations, volunteer labor, and months of long nights Ryan never complained about. The sign read, Mountain Haven K9 and Kids Center. It was more than a building. It was a promise. People from the whole county gathered outside, local news vans lining the gravel drive. Children chased each other across the lawn. Volunteers gave tours, and the smell of grilled food floated through the air. Ranger stayed at Ryan's side, moving through the crowd with calm confidence. Some people reached out to brush his fur. Others simply stood back, staring with quiet respect. They knew the story, everyone did. At the stage, a reporter approached, microphone in hand, her expression gentle but curious. "Detective Mercer," she said, "could we ask you something on camera?" Ryan nodded, straightening slightly. Ranger sat beside him, posture steady, tail resting against Ryan's boot. The reporter lifted the microphone. "The town knows what happened in the storm. They know Ranger played a major part in rescuing Eli and the twins. But one question people keep asking is, why did you keep Ranger with you through everything, even after your suspension, even after the department distanced themselves?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He looked down at Ranger, fingers brushing the shepherd's head. Ranger pressed into the touch, eyes soft, breath steady. "He didn't just find the boy," Ryan said, voice low but sure. "He found the truth I was too blind to see. The truth about myself, about the people who needed me, about what really matters." The reporter's expression softened. The camera zoomed closer. "And somehow," Ryan continued, swallowing, "he saved me too." Something shifted in the crowd. A quiet ripple of emotion rolled through, the kind that silences even small children without being asked. Ryan looked straight into the camera lens, as if speaking to someone beyond the screen, someone who needed to hear it. "What's your story with a loyal pet?" The cameraman lowered the rig. The reporter stepped away. But Ranger continued staring into the misty tree line, as though something out there called to him, something only he could sense. He wasn't restless. He wasn't afraid. He was aware, almost as if guarding the forest itself. Laura walked up beside Ryan, arms crossed loosely. "He's watching the woods again," she said quietly. "He always does," Ryan replied. "Do you think he's looking for danger?" "Maybe." Ryan paused. "Or maybe he's making sure the mountain knows we're not running anymore." Eli ran over to Ranger then, breathless from play. "Come on, boy," he shouted with delighted urgency. "Mason and Mela want you to help us pick the next puppy name." Ranger finally tore his gaze from the forest and followed the kids across the field, tail lifting, stride confident. Every head turned as he passed. The children adored him. The adults respected him. And Ryan watched with a mix of pride and gratitude he couldn't put into words. The dedication ceremony began soon after. Local leaders thanked the team. Volunteers shared their hopes. Someone unveiled a small memorial plaque honoring all rescued canines who had served the county. But it was the closing remarks that stayed with the audience. Ryan stepped up to the podium. Behind him, Ranger sat tall and alert. "This center exists because a dog refused to give up," Ryan said, "because he believed in something long before I did. He showed me the value of every life, no matter how small, no matter how lost." The crowd listened without a sound. And if a dog can fight through storms, corruption, danger, and fear, then so can we. Applause broke across the field. Later, as the sun began to fall gently behind the ridge, Ryan and Laura stood together, watching the children play. Ranger lay in the grass, letting Mila braid wildflowers into the fur around his collar. He had earned every petal. The mist lifted at last, revealing the full stretch of Sierra Lake forest. Ranger lifted his head again, ears pointed to the horizon, as if reminding them all that peace is something worth guarding. Laura leaned her head on Ryan's shoulder. "What now?" she asked. Ryan watched the kids, watched Ranger, watched the center that had risen from a night that should have broken them. "Now," he said, "we keep building." And Ranger, with a final look towards the forest, let out one quiet breath, as if agreeing. A chapter had closed, but his watch was far from over. For anyone listening, for any heart still healing, the message lingered in the air long after the crowd left. Loyalty saves. Courage heals. and a dog's devotion can change everything. To everyone watching at home, to every viewer who knows what it means to love a dog deeply, what's your story with a loyal pet? Support the channel, honor the shepherds who guard our world, and let their stories be heard.